Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Ian Shepherd, and I'm the owner of Right Start Newcomer Services. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's live stream. We have a really good show about learning English in Canada. And tonight we have two great guest speakers. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that Right Start Newcomer Services conducts business in Chipuktuk, which is how you say Halifax in the Mi'kmaq language. This city is part of the ancestral unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This means that when settlers came, the Indigenous people did not surrender their territory and instead signed treaties with Europeans. As a business, we are committed to upholding these treaties as we continue to build relationships between settlers, newcomers, and Mi'kmaq people. Okay, great. So tonight, like I said, we have a great show. Our two guests tonight are Erin McDonald from Learn English Nova Scotia and Arlie Hood from ISANS. So first of all, we're going to bring Erin onto the live stream. Welcome, Erin. There's Arlie too. Oh, sorry, Arlie, you're not part of this right now.
Hello.
Actually, Arlie, you can just stay on if you want. Having a little technical difficulties. So welcome, Erin and Arlie. So first I will introduce Erin. I know Erin sent me her. Sorry, Erin, I'm just looking for your
That's okay.
introduction. How are you two doing tonight anyway?
Good. It's really sunny in Halifax tonight. Warm.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so nice this afternoon. I went out and took a walk. It felt like it was spring.
I know.
Hopeful.
I actually got to wear shorts today, so. Okay, yeah. So here's Erin's bio. Erin McDonald has worked in various capacities with newcomers to Canada since 1998. Okay, she has owned and operated Learn English Nova Scotia Testing and Counseling Center since 2011. So great, thank you for coming on, Erin. And
my pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at the Learn English Nova Scotia Center?
Yes, our job is to welcome newcomers to Nova Scotia by starting the process of learning English at government-funded language programs. So we do that by doing a test, which is called the Canadian Language Benchmark Placement Test, which was is a test that was created in Canada exclusively for newcomers who want to learn English for settling in Canada. So this test is different from IELTS, it's different from CLPIP, it's different from academic test. In fact, we don't even like the word test. It is not really a test. It is an assessment that helps us to find out what you can do in English, what you need to learn, and what you already know so that we can make sure that you find a program that fits your needs.
Okay, great. So you mentioned the Canadian language benchmarks. Can you talk a little bit more about what the benchmarks are and maybe what the different levels are?
Sure. So the benchmarks are created to be what I like to say is like a description of your English. So the benchmarks start at level 1 and they go up to level 12. And level 1 to 4, those skills basically mean that you are a beginner learner in English. So you are learning new vocabulary in English, you are learning about making sentences, you're learning about communicating face-to-face. Benchmark 5 to 8, the language in that level, you're focusing more on increasing your ability to talk on the phone, talk on Zoom, talk in situations that are a little more challenging. So sometimes when you don't know all the words, but you still need to find out information. And as you increase your level, each level you get a few more skills that help you to communicate your needs in English. And when we talk about the Canadian language benchmarks, each number tells us information about what you can do in English that will help you live in Canada. So talking to your neighbors, talking to a doctor, talking to your children's teacher, all the skills and tasks that you need to feel comfortable and successful in Canadian English.
Great. Is there a place that learners can go to learn more about these Canadian language benchmarks?
Yes. If you want to learn about the Canadian language benchmarks themselves, there's a great website called, it's very easy, it's just language.ca. So it is a system of describing English skills that is used across Canada. So no matter where you land in Canada, no matter where you're going to get services, these language benchmarks are recognized. And that is important because Canada is a big country and we know people move around because people want to be close to family, they want to be close to work. So we want to make sure that you have services wherever you go. So this information helps you to move between programs a little more easily. Also, language.ca gives you a lot of information about what the numbers mean. So if you have, say, benchmark 4 in listening and speaking, what does that mean? And how can I, as a learner, learn more about how to improve? So it's not just about what the teacher can teach you, but also about what you need to learn yourself. The Canadian language benchmarks, we also have a website, lasns.info. And that gives you information about how to get these services here in Nova Scotia. So we are available to do that all around Nova Scotia, no matter where you're living. Cape Breton, Yarmouth, Halifax, doesn't matter. We can provide services.
Sorry, can you just repeat the website, Erin?
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's at lasns.info, INFO.
Okay, great. I'll put that up on the bottom of the screen so people can visit that. If you are anywhere in Nova Scotia, or is it just in the Halifax?
Anywhere in Nova Scotia. So if you live even in the smallest little village in Cape Breton, you can still get services from us.
Yeah.
They will look a little differently than they do in Halifax, for example, but they will be the same services.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Perfect. All right, so let's take that down. And my next question for you, Erin, is, sometimes learners, they've asked me, why do they need to take a CLB placement test when they've already done IELTS?
Yes, that's a great question. And I totally understand because people have a lot to do when they come to Canada and they think, oh, one more thing I just don't have time for. The IELTS is very important because it is recognized internationally and it is recognized by the government for immigration purposes. But every language assessment has a different purpose. And the purpose of the Canadian Language Benchmark Placement Test is to help your teacher understand your needs in terms of language for settling in Canada. The IELTS test is not focusing on the language you need to settle in Canada. It is focusing on English more broadly, more generally. And this helps your teacher to understand better your needs here as a newcomer to Canada. Also, the services that are offered free of charge by the government to help you to improve language for settling in Canada and for improving employment and increasing your professional language skills, those services are available in different forms across the country. So it's almost like we have to have the same language, the Canadian language benchmark language, all across the country so that you can use all those different services no matter where you are in the country. And it's also not really a test like IELTS is. It is more opportunity for us to learn more about your skills so that we can match you with the right program for your needs. So it's a little bit different than a test. It's not academic. It's not for university. It's only for attending language classes that are funded by the government.
Okay, great. So I just want to mention before we go on to our next question that if you have questions during the live stream, please type them into the comments section, and we will have a question and answer period during the last 10 or 15 minutes tonight. Okay, great. So my next question is that I heard that there's going to be a new, not test, but assessment called the CLBPA. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. I could talk a very, very little about that because I don't know a lot about it. But the CLBPT placement test is something we've been using for many years. And it is only a paper test. And so many, many learners tell us, why? Why is it only paper test? People are more comfortable, especially now since COVID, with typing and using keyboard to write their test. However, you don't have to worry if you don't feel comfortable with typing. The PA test is going to be more computer-based. We don't know much more beyond that, but what we do know is that it will be computer-based, but people will still have the option to, I apologize, I'm just trying to turn my ringer down. Okay. They will still have the option to do it in paper if it's more comfortable for them. Okay. However, there's a few things that still need to be worked out. We're hoping that it will be remote because right now during COVID, most of our tests right now are being done remotely, just like many other services. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, once somebody arrives in Canada and they do their CLB placement test or PA in the future, what are the options for learning English? So I know there are different categories of newcomers to Canada. So there are permanent residents, there are international students, there are temporary foreign workers. What are the different options for these different groups?
Great question. So I'm sure Arlie is going to speak a lot about some of the programs that are available for newcomers. But in general, permanent residents and refugees are eligible for a program that is delivered across Canada, and it's called the Linc program. And it is language instruction for newcomers to Canada, I believe. Help me out here. Hopefully I didn't mangle the acronym. This program is developed right alongside the benchmarks. So the benchmarks are numbers, like I said, between 1 and 8 in Nova Scotia that help us to describe not just your skills, but also the tasks that will be assigned to you in the class. So when we do the assessment, we will give you 4 numbers, 1 for listening, 1 for speaking, 1 for reading, and 1 for writing. And so for permanent residents and for refugee clients, they're eligible for a program that will assign them to a class that recognizes those benchmarks and will work on many different tasks to increase their language level in those skill areas. This program is much more general. So it's looking at living in Canada, and the goal is to get more confidence and more skills to improve your quality of life in Canada, including getting your health needs met, taking care of your family, finding basic work, looking after the things you need to take care of when you come to Canada. As the language level in the Linc program increases, increasingly the types of activities that you'll be engaged in will be more complex, so more focused on maybe returning to college or returning to university. For other learners who are not yet permanent residents or who are not refugees, there are a range of different programs starting at around benchmark level 3 that allow you to participate in a range of programs Most of them are part-time or flexible programs, recognizing many people must work or have other activities that they have to do, like take care of family members. And those programs are range from language for every day, but are in the evening, for example, and then other programs that are very specific to your profession. For example, communication in the healthcare sector, or engineering, or increasing your ability or comfort level with idiomatic language, listening, and speaking skills in the workplace. So for every client has different needs. And some of those programs are not accessible to you at this moment if you're not a permanent resident. However, they all use the same principle of using the benchmarks to help describe your skills and show progress. So they meet your needs in different ways. If you have benchmarks that are lower than benchmark 3 and you're not a permanent resident yet, or you're not a refugee, there are a range of also programs in the community that are designed to help you to feel more comfortable and to feel safe practicing speaking, practicing listening, practicing whatever it is that you need to focus on. And those are available in Halifax, for example, at the public library. Also, the YMCA program is available across the province, and those are more open to people who don't have permanent residency yet. So there's a range of different opportunities to practice outside of the Linc program and outside of the programs that are meant for permanent residents. And so that's why we encourage everyone to get a benchmark assessment, because there's just so many different opportunities that you can access once you have an assessment.
Yeah, okay, great answer. So I just have a couple more questions for you, Erin. I know I've heard in the past that sometimes it takes a little while. So once somebody arrives, say a new permanent resident arrives in Canada, sometimes there's a wait until there's a space for their CLB assessment. Is that still the case with COVID?
Yeah, unfortunately, right now there is a bit of a wait. We are working really hard to come up with a solution to dealing with that. Because we're doing remote assessments, as well as some face-to-face assessments, there's just some more time constraints, but we're working on that, and we hope to have a solution in the next few months. So normally it's not a big wait. We're really try our best to get people onto a waiting list for language programs within a few weeks, but right now we're experiencing a bit of high demand, but I feel comfortable that we're gonna have that taken care of soon. So it's hard to give you an exact estimation, but our aim is 2 weeks waiting period after you request an assessment.
Right. I don't know if we've covered this, but is it ever possible to get an assessment done before arrival in Canada?
That's a great question. And we would love to do that. And of course, increasingly with remote options, it's increasingly possible. But right now we don't have the ability to. We can't make that decision on our own. That's a decision that is made by an organization that governs the test. So the test is a standardized assessment that has been designed by professional test designers, and they have the decision-making power about how and when the test is used. So we are limited that way, but it's certainly a great idea. And I think it would probably give people lots of peace of mind to know what services they could access once they got to Canada. But in the meantime, just use English every chance you get. I know Arlie's going to give you lots of suggestions, but yeah, what I tell people is don't study for this test. We don't want anyone to study, but we do want you to come rested. We do want you to come, I don't want you to come hungry. So, eat before you come. Come and be comfortable. If you're not feeling well, of course, especially during COVID, we don't want you to come. But make sure that you take care of yourself before the assessment, because I think that helps people more than anything. And don't rush either. when you come, we know it's important to get started with language, but don't feel you have to come the next day after you arrive, because we know you're going to be very tired and you're going to have a lot of things on your mind, and that's not good for the language assessment.
Mm-hmm. Good. I just have one more question, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if somebody takes the assessment and they disagree with their score? So maybe they got a low score and they feel that they deserve a higher score. Is there any way to take it again or take it again in the future?
That's a great question. We know that language is really, really important. It's important for many things. And so people feel very strongly about their experience learning English and improving their language. What we do is we always meet every client right after we do the language assessment, and we meet them one-on-one. If they need an interpreter, if you need an interpreter, we can arrange that. And we explain in detail about the results that they receive from the assessment, what they mean, and what services they can access. So we find that time that we take to explain really helps people to understand better what the results mean. Occasionally, someone has very strong feelings about how they're concerned about the test results. And we meet every client that raises concerns to address those concerns. And it's very, very rare case that we would need to reassess. In our experience, and I hope that Arlie can back me up, is that the vast majority of times when we assess someone and we place them in a language program, they're in the right level. So it's very rare. Okay, good. So that means that we believe the assessment's very accurate. We're absolutely open to people's feedback and comments and concerns because we know how important it is. But we also think it's important to take the time to learn more about your own benchmarks and to reflect on how, because we all know that we have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. So I think it is important to look at that feedback and see what ways that we can work on that. Because it's not a judgment. It's just information.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions, Erin. I think, Erin, you're going to stick around for a little while. So if we have questions at the end, so if you have questions for Erin, just put them in the comments section. But we're going to move on to the second part of tonight's show, and Arlie is going to talk. So let me introduce Arlie. So Arlie Hood has been an English teacher for 20 years. She has taught in China, Slovakia, and Turkey, and now she lives in Halifax where she teaches. She has been at ISANS, which is the Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, for 13 years. At ISANS, she has two jobs. One is teaching adult newcomers who never went to school in their countries. And her other job is teaching the teachers at ISANS. And I don't know which is more difficult, teaching the teachers or teaching people who have not gone to school in their home country.
Definitely the teachers.
Definitely the teachers. Okay, well, thank you for coming on tonight, Arlie.
Thank you.
How's everything going?
It's going well. Thanks for inviting me here.
You're welcome. Okay, so Arlie is going to talk to us about some language learning strategies. So Arlie, I'll just say personally that she's one of the best teachers I know, if not the best. So I think she has a lot of wisdom to share with you tonight. So I'm going to bring up her presentation and Arlie is going to take over.
Right, so language learning strategies. You can probably go to the next slide, Ian.
I will do that.
The next slide is a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about how do you learn, what are learning strategies, and how do learning strategies help. Next slide, please. So first, I want you to think about yourself. And Erin and Ian, this is for you too. I want you to think about how you learn something new. So it could be learning a language or learning about buses in Halifax or learning how to drive in Nova Scotia. So here are 3 questions for you. How do you learn best? How do you remember information? And how do you practice? Now, many people don't think about these things because for a lot of us, they're automatic because we've been practicing them for our entire life in school. So we spend a lot of time looking at our Canadian language benchmark numbers and thinking about going to the next class, but we miss the most important part, which is, next slide, please, learning strategies. Does anybody want to guess what are learning strategies? If you want to write in the comment box, you're welcome. Or I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, I think you can just keep talking. If
talking.
any comments come up to answer your question, I will share them with all of us.
So learning strategies are the tools that, thanks, are the tools that help us, fast fingers, are the tools that help us learn. So they're the tools that we use to understand new words in English or write an email to our manager in English, or when we call to book an appointment for a COVID vaccine. These are all strategies that we use. And we use learning strategies before we do something, while we do something, and after we do something. So they help us in many different ways. So like I said, we all learned learning strategies in school, but most of us don't remember. So we remember the math and the history and the biology, but we don't remember the strategies that helped us learn and helped us remember. So now that you're in Canada and maybe you're thinking about a language school, it's time to try to remember some of these learning strategies, and they'll make English a lot easier to learn. So now, as an aside, I met Ian when we were doing our master's degree together. Now, Ian, when you started your master's degree, I think you'd been out of school for a few years.
Yep, more than a few.
More than a few, yeah. How easy was it to go back to school after not being in school?
It was a little bit tricky. I mean, writing papers, I hadn't written a long paper in a long time, but I was motivated. I wanted to improve my knowledge in the field, and I knew I had to get it to, increase my earnings and further my career. So I did have the motivation to study.
Right. So the first few weeks of going back to school felt really bumpy, like unnatural and a bit uncomfortable. I felt the same way, thinking I did this in university before and I didn't think about it for 10 years and then was back in a master's degree. So these are the learning strategies that we put down and didn't think about. So if you can go to the next slide, Ian. So learning strategies change and grow as your English gets better. So this means you have to think about what works for your English and what doesn't work for your English. And you need to think critically about that. So sometimes you'll outgrow your strategies, like in this picture, the pants are too short. Maybe something or a strategy that helped you a year ago doesn't help you anymore. So one example of this is using your phone to translate every word that you read in an article or on a coronavirus vaccine information paper. Maybe that strategy helped you before. But now that you're here in Canada and maybe you want to go to language school or go to college or go to work, that strategy doesn't work anymore. You can't stop everything at work or at college or in a language class and translate every word that you read that you don't understand. So that's an example of a strategy that was good, but isn't good anymore. So you've outgrown it. And that means you need to find new ways to help yourself with new words and to help yourself with your reading. And saying goodbye to old learning strategies is like saying goodbye to a friend because we're so comfortable with them. But we need to understand that we need to feel uncomfortable to improve our English. And when we feel uncomfortable with a new learning strategy, we'll grow and we'll become used to it, and it will help us and make us stronger learners. Now, next slide, Ian. So here, learning strategies are the foundation or the base of your language learning. So the stronger your learning strategies are, the better your listening and speaking and reading and writing that Erin talked about will be. So one of my students, when I spend a lot of time teaching about learning strategies in my class. In fact, that's the number one thing I teach in my class is learning strategies. Because if there are no strategies, your English won't improve. So one of my students talked about learning strategies as the bottom of his house. And he said he needed a really strong bottom of his house, so the rest of his house would be really good. And that was his understanding of learning strategies. Now, once you start thinking about strategies, it can actually be quite fun. I'm a teacher, so it's fun for me. It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting process because strategies work differently for different people. So you have to try new strategies, and some will feel good, and some you'll need practice, and some won't fit very well. So then you can try something different. And strategies are different for everyone. So what works for you maybe doesn't work for somebody else. So I've got an example on the next slide. And this is about a student called Ali. So Ali is a good student. His writing is really strong, but he doesn't like speaking. And when he needs to leave a message, he writes all of the words on a paper and then he reads his writing. Is this a good strategy? What do you think, Erin?
I think it's great. It works.
It works. Maybe it works for a little while. Maybe it works for a little while, like, for example, Ali was my student and he left me a message 2 days ago and I could hear that he was reading. But if Ali wants to get a job in Canada, will that help him with his job? Or if he wants to go to language school and talk to some classmates, I don't think that strategy will help him anymore. We know that Ali doesn't feel confident with his speaking, and I think he doesn't like making mistakes is the real story. So he needs to understand that speaking, for example, isn't 0 or 100%. He doesn't have to speak 100% perfectly to live life in Nova Scotia and to live life in Halifax. We can look at speaking different ways. So we can look at speaking as in communicating, maybe not being perfect, but speaking so people understand, or speaking with perfect words and perfect grammar, but it takes you a long time and you need to write everything before you say it. So the communication will help Ali more in his life in Nova Scotia. So maybe he can practice speaking on the phone. He can practice speaking and he can record himself and play it back so he can hear that he understands what he's saying, but maybe nobody else will hear. So it's a good chance for him to practice. Or maybe he should start small with his teacher and maybe leave a different message every day to practice, or just send a message saying, "Hi teacher, yesterday I went to Costco and I bought chicken and blueberries. Bye." Something different every day. And teachers are really good. Teachers want their students to improve. So teachers will help. And then maybe he can start practicing small talk. I know Ian does a lot of practice with small talk on his website. So maybe he can practice small talk with his neighbors, or he can order a coffee from Tim Hortons. So starting small and building his confidence. Because if Ali wants to work in Canada, he needs to find a place where he's comfortable with his communication, even if it's not perfect. And it probably won't be. A lot of people don't speak perfect English. I make mistakes with my English, and I've been speaking English forever. So Ian, if I'm going to get you to skip the next slide just for time. But the last slide is a resource that maybe will help you. This is a resource that I know Erin has at lens, and I know that Ian, I think you worked on this before. I think you helped to create this at ISANS. So this is a really good resource to help with your listening and speaking and reading and writing, but it also gives some really good strategies. So here is a link. I don't think you can access the link, but maybe Ian can
I can click on it and then I'll copy the link into the.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, and this resource is free. It breaks it down into all of the Canadian language benchmarks. So you can have an idea of, okay, if my listening is a level 3, here's some things I can do to work on my listening.
So I can't actually put the link into the, I can't display it right now, but I think if you go to the ISANS website, and it is available on the ISANS website. Is that right, Arlie?
It is. I'll actually find it now.
Okay, perfect.
It's on the Lens website too.
Oh, great. So Arlie is finding that link, so you'll be able to access that at home. In the meantime, does anybody have any comments or questions? I see a couple comments that I'll bring up in a second, but we're going to spend the next 10 minutes or so, doing a question and answer period. So this is your chance to ask Erin a question, ask Arlie a question, or ask me a question about learning English in Canada.
I wanted to just, I don't know if someone has a question, but I just wanted to add to what Arlie just said about communication. So just, sometimes when we say the word test, for example, in our work, people get really stressed and worried because they want to make sure that everything is perfect. And what we try to make sure you understand right from the beginning is that learning English in Canada, including the assessment, is not about perfection. We're not looking for perfect spelling or perfect vocabulary. What we're looking for is ability to communicate in English. And that is also what is a focus in the classes, is communication, not perfection.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Erin. Yeah, so I put the link up at the bottom of the screen there. I'm not going to read it all out, but maybe you want to write that down, and then you'll be able to go to the ISANS website and download it on your own, or else go to lasns.info, and you should be able to find the Practice English on Your Own guide. So thank you very much, Arlie. You shared a lot of good tips. But yeah, sometimes I forget about how important learning strategies are. I think, even as a teacher, I get focused on methods of teaching and little things, vocabulary and, correcting writing, but the strategies might be the most important thing about learning a language.
Absolutely. And for years, I taught in a level 5 class, and I had students who were engineers, and they had gone to university 30 years ago and done well in university, and they were successful. But learning from a textbook in university 30 years ago is really different from learning a language, where we do want to communicate and we do want to make ourselves understood to help ourselves communicate in our new province. So it's as soon as I started thinking about learning strategies and teaching my class learning strategies, they said things like, oh, I didn't know that there were different ways to learn new words, and I didn't know that there were different ways to think about things. And it's strategies, like anything, take practice, but the more you start thinking about them and building them into your language learning, the stronger you'll be.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you made me think that, things change, right? So maybe what worked 30 years ago when they just used textbooks might not work so well today. And technology is changing all the time too. So it is good to keep on top of those learning strategies and update them.
Mm-hmm. And so much of language learning and language learning classes are a newer method of teaching that does involve a lot of group work. Well, before coronavirus, and a lot of collaboration and working together. And that's very different from the learning a lot of people had in their country, which was maybe read this, memorize it, then here's the test, now you can forget it. And that's not how language works.
Yeah. Okay, great. So before we go, we do have some comments and questions that I want to show. So Bay or B, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, smiles. So let's smile back. Thank you for watching tonight. And we have a comment from Elena from ISANS. Hi, Elena. How can clients from outside of HRM do the test? So I think this is for you, Erin.
Great question. Yep, good question. So basically, they can do it exactly the same way that any client can do the test in Halifax. So just go to our website, and there's an application form. Soon you're going to be able to just apply right on the website, but for now, just download the application, and there's an email where you send that application. If you need assistance, you can call our number as well, which is listed very clearly on our website. And what happens after that is that we will ask you some questions to find out if you're a good candidate to do the remote test, which means you have a computer at home, you have internet at home, you feel comfortable using the computer and internet alone, you have experience with Zoom, you have a headset, you have webcam, you're comfortable with everyday English. If you say no to any of those questions and you're not comfortable or you don't have the equipment, that's okay. We can do the test in person. So if you don't live in Halifax and you do it remotely, you do it like anyone does. You get sent a Zoom link by the assessor and they will lead you through the steps. If you need to do it face-to-face, we have assessors who will actually they will find a place in your community to do the assessment. For example, you will meet them at the library and you'll do it face-to-face, or you'll do it at community center or the YMCA. It depends where the place is. So wherever you live, they find a way to do it face-to-face.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Elena, for that question. Elena has a comment. Hello, Arlie. Nice to meet you all.
Good luck with your garden.
Sorry we can't see you, Elena. I think it's been a while since we've all seen each other. Okay, so Elena just didn't make a comment there, and Sadia has a question or a comment. So I loved your slides, the thinking dinosaur. Was there a thinking dinosaur?
Philosophaurus. Philosophaurus. It's too late for me to say that.
Yeah.
Philosophaurus. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sadia. Thank you for watching. We're almost out of time, but I do have one question, and both of you can handle this. So what advice would you give to somebody who wanted to start teaching English in Canada? So is it a good career? How would somebody get started in this field? Or doing what you do, Erin, how would somebody get involved?
Yeah, so I would say the very first step is to go to language.ca and sign up for the CLB boot camp. That's what it's called. And that gives you a good understanding of what the Canadian language benchmarks mean, how they work and all that kind of thing. And so if you have teaching experience in another part of the world, it won't be all new, but it will be a new introduction to the Canadian language benchmark. Yeah.
Great. That's a great place to start. And Arlie, can you add anything to that?
I definitely agree with the CLB bootcamp. It takes 7 to 10 hours. I did it again recently just because I wanted to snoop and see what it was like. And it took me about 7 hours to go through it. I would say also, and this is going to be difficult with coronavirus, but we won't always have coronavirus, is get out and volunteer. Become a library tutor, library volunteer. I know ISANS has a volunteer tutor program that matches tutors with a person or with a family. And ISANS does have classroom volunteers for low-level classes as well. Any chance you have to volunteer, to learn, and to experience the Canadian language benchmarks in action before you apply for a job is probably the best thing, and that will help you get a job, because a lot of job interviews ask about the Canadian language benchmarks, and the more you know about them, the better.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, like the library, for example, the tutors are doing it on Zoom right now, so you can do it even during Corona. And what I think is important about that is it's helping other people in your community by sharing the skills that you have, and that also gives you job experience. You can put that on your resume, and that helps right from the get-go. And I think that also, if it's looking for work as an ESL instructor, or if it's to improve your language, I think the same applies. Go with your interest. So, seek out the things that you're interested in. If you like to ride horses, then you go find a horse place. If you like to paint, paint. I have a friend who she didn't have any paint, so she just painted with nail polish for the first few months. But whatever it is that you enjoy, I think that's a really great way to meet people who have similar interests, and you already have vocabulary that you can build. And plus, it's good for your health to do something that relaxes you.
Great.
Sorry, I know they were over time, but I just wanted to say that.
No, I just want to show a couple more comments before we finish. Elena is she's feeling the love from us, I guess, from our waves. Great. And she says, it's great that Lens provides interpreters. I think that is a great service. Marla is watching. So Marla says, hey, Marla, how's it going? And Sadia has one question. So she says she's done the CLB boot camp, but she doesn't have any experience. What should be my next step? And I think we sort of covered that. So volunteering is a great step. Is there anything else we could add to that?
If Sadia is interested in actually teaching, looking at some of the requirements of getting certified as an ESL instructor as well. I know at ISANS, they want people to have a university degree, but also a university degree, some sort of ESL certificate, like the CELTA, which is 3.5 weeks of your life. It's painful. I cried, but I came out certified, and it's all good. And I use the things I learned every day. But there are other options that maybe won't make you cry and are a bit cheaper than CELTA.
So I know Sadia, and I know she's just done the CELTA. So she has completed the CELTA.
You're a survivor.
That's great. So she's part of the way there, right? She just needs the actual experience to find a job here in Canada. So I think, volunteering, if you can find, maybe it's a part-time job or a substitute job, maybe it's sometimes easier to get those positions than a full-time instructor. I don't know if we can add anything else to that.
And whatever you can do to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
I know that we've hired a lot of people who were substitute teachers. We hired a lot of volunteers because we can see them in action, and we can see them and how they interact with clients and with students, and see how well they take feedback and how well they work with other teachers. It's a really good opportunity. Exactly.
Great. So I'm aware of the time. I just want to show Marla's comment. Yay. So Marla, thank you. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for participating. And Sadia says, yay as well. Thank you. I'm so excited. She can't wait to start. So good luck, Sadia. It can be tough to get your foot in the door as a beginning instructor, but keep on working, keep your eyes out for every opportunity, and get every piece of experience that you can. And I know that you'll make it, because that's what you really want to do, right? So good luck, and have faith, I guess. Okay, well, that's all the time for tonight. Thank you so much to Erin and Arlie for taking time out of their busy schedule. They gave us really a lot to think about. And thank you all for watching. Thank you for asking questions and participating. And I will see you next Wednesday. We will have another live stream, and the topic for next week will be immigration to Canada. So we will speak with an immigration consultant, and you'll be able to ask all of your questions about immigrating and sponsoring family members to come to Canada. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks for the invitation. That was fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.